All right, my friends. Today is August the 18th. It is Monday. Let's go ahead and get into the market outlook and plans for the week ahead. Okay, so let's just jump straight into things. Let's start off with the macro gap. Doesn't have any dramatic changes. Just going to touch on a few key points here and there. So first and foremost, we're still expecting that higher in Q4 and that chop in Q3 kind of thesis that we've been operating off of for a while. Yo guys, hit that like and subscribe button for me. Appreciate it. We'll go over the doodle bit of this yap. So these are the main macro kind of doodle conversations that make sense to me. So none of these should be new. We've been yapping about these for a while. So let's get into it. First and foremost, the kind of shallow dip where we attacked the local lows and reclaimed the range. This was the main setup that I shared with you guys last week. This is what I do think we're set up to do. From this reclaim play, we're looking for either are we going to dead cat and kind of reject, and from there it would make sense to do one of the lower plays, or are we going to successfully reclaim the range, right? It's just a matter of watching how the flows come in this week. I can't predict that stuff, but I do think that even in the short term it makes sense to bet on this range reclaim, so I'm doing so. The next bigger picture play is the kind of medium-ish term pullback, which is just basically pulling back to the previous macro range. I think that this is the least likely of all the scenarios. I think that we're set up for either shallow pullback or we keep everyone sidelined. People are scared right now and we just trade up from here and never really let people get their entries that they're looking for, or we do the much, much deeper pullback, right? I'm praying that we don't do the 90K pullback. But you plan out all the scenarios and you react to what plays out in front of you, right? You can't, you don't have any control over any of these outcomes. So these are the main kind of plans. Again, I would consider the medium-ish pullback to be the least likely. I think that the shallow dip is the most likely. And then if this fails and we start to, kind of accept back into here and chop around in this low volume region, then I think that it makes sense to target the lower volume, the lower support level, right, at 90K. From a bit, framing things in an optimistic light, being able to bid 90K going into Q4 would be the dream scenario, but I just don't see it taking place, right? You would need a true fearful event, comparable to what we had, earlier in the year with tariffs, right? My closing thoughts, as always, are, try to remain optimistic about the trend, being optimistic, being hopeful. It really pays in these markets, right? And patience, right? That's the other, if you can balance out being optimistic and being patient with this trend, this has been painful for people that have been trying to breakout trade it, right? The breakouts just keep failing, which is basically the status quo moving forward. I think that, if you can just remain optimistic and be patient, when dips come, you buy into them and you don't freak out and don't get emotional when the potential breakout comes. When the breakout comes, you either say, this is either it or it isn't. I don't have any control over it. I'm just going to wait and watch, right? And spot long and chill, basically. Medium time frame, the conversation is, are we going to, find demand in this previous, swing low? Like this is the plan from last week, right? I do think that we're going to find demand here and kind of bounce back. From there, you're looking, are we going to dead cat, bounce off the 118 HVN, or are we going to reaccept into the range properly? Ultimately, I don't know. I'm going to have to see how things react this week. I think that betting on the range reclaim play makes a lot of sense. And then we'll just have to see how the rejection, or acceptance kind of takes place following that. If, unfortunately, though, if we either don't get this range reclaim or we just get the range reclaim and then end up rejecting, the main bearish medium time frame plan is us starting to basically accept back into low volume here. Right, this is a significant region where we're bouncing off of right now. I don't want to see us sluggish below 115 because to me that means we're probably going to start to accept into the low volume and fill it out. That would set us up in the long term for a really great long opportunity, right? Trying to buy the range lows, which would overlap with the macro support region of like 110, 111-ish. But the reason why you don't want this to take place is just because it means the bottoming process is going to take a lot longer versus the kind of V-ish style recovery. Not a whole lot to say on the medium time frame. I think that dips are for buying. So you still want to be, you definitely want to focus on your trading strategy, be dip buying, but conversely, you don't really want to be expecting that you're going to be catching the massive breakouts. So a dip comes and from an aggressive standpoint, you want to be locking in the profit. From a swing standpoint, you just can maybe go into accumulation mode. That's totally valid. That's what I'm doing with spot most definitely. But from an active trading standpoint, you buy the dip, it trades up, you sell it off again, right? Essentially fading breakouts right now. I personally won't be shorting any breakout attempts, but I'll be quick to take profit into them, that's for sure. That is more or less it, right? Currently, we're set up for more of a choppy kind of medium time frame structure. If some of these, if the range reclaim can come through and some of the rolling VWAP and anchored VWAP reclaims can come through, then maybe we can start to talk more optimistically about an impulse. But for right now, I think that you should expect that Bitcoin is set up more or less to be choppy. That overlaps a lot with, price structure and seasonality are really confluent with that argument. That's pretty much it, right? It's gonna be significant resistance, but I do think that bulls will get through it. Whether we trade lower first, who knows? First and foremost, the conversation around altcoins for me is the same, that I'm not interested in going down the risk curve very much right now, right? I want to stay centered around the benchmarks and stay centered around being net long, but being not, I'm not trying to be overly risky with the positioning right now. I think it's not sensible to be all in alts. So eventually that will change because Bitcoin is going to have momentum eventually one day, right? And when that time comes is when I'm going to start to allocate to alts. So I know that a lot of people, that's, it's hard to be patient, but it's just the drawdown and the chop that you deal with the alts is just not worth it in the medium to short term, right? I'd rather just be patient, wait for Bitcoin to show me, that it's going to trade up. And in the meantime, I'll just be a dip buyer on Bitcoin and things like that, right? And then eventually I will buy ups. I will be adding to alts eventually. Maybe I'll move some of my larger caps into alts short term and then move them back into large caps. We'll see how that plays out, whether it's going to be a cash or a Bitcoin kind of play. As far as what I'd be interested in though, my takes are, if I'm going to be playing a layer one, it's probably going to just be the big boys. So ETH and Solana. I like memes and I like dinos, right? And that's pretty much it for what I would have interest in bidding. I'm not going to be buying any of these things anytime soon, probably. But it's a good idea to just have these in the back of your mind. Unfortunately, the list of what I want to buy is subject to change because I don't know what the, environment will be when Bitcoin does have momentum. But most likely, I'm going to be returning to layer ones, memes, and potentially Dino coins. Okay, that's pretty much it for the altcoins. I mean, you can look at my watch list, right? These are the things that I hold. I'm playing it super safe, obviously, these days. These are a few of the things that I'm interested in. I like memes. I like the dinos. You could maybe make a smart play if you want to go for Aave or Pendle or something like that. I'm probably just going to focus on dumb plays though. My smart play will be Bitcoin. My dumb play will be memes and stuff like that, Okay, that's pretty much it for me though, guys. So closing thoughts, content yap. So as you guys saw last week, I got the educational rework not completed, but I did a lot of it last week. So this week, one of my goals is to, not necessarily finalize it, but get a lot of the details filled in on that and kind of clean that stuff up a little bit more. So keep an eye out for that. I also have a big goal of trying to release the new system that I shared with you guys 2 weeks ago. That's pretty much it for me though, guys. You have a good idea of all of my plans. You know my Bitcoin plans, my altcoin plans, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So good luck out there and cheers.